city of Merciles never slept. Bright neon lights painted the night sky, and music from street performers mixed with the low hum of air cars floating above the ground. Every corner smelled of metal, oil, and fried food. But that night, one thing caught everyone's attention. The great intergalactic circus had arrived. People stood in long lines, waiting to see strange creatures from other worlds. Children pointed at posters showing glowing beasts, winged aliens, and machines that could dance like humans. For them, it was entertainment. But for Elias Grant, it was something else, a mystery. Elias worked as a ship mechanic in the lower docks. His clothes were stained with grease, and his hands carried the smell of burned wires. He didn't plan to visit the circus that night. But the loudspeaker near the corner shop kept repeating the same line. "Come witness the wonders of the galaxy. Real aliens, real emotion, real fear." Something about that last word, fear, made him stop. He frowned. Fear wasn't entertainment. Still, curiosity pushed him forward. He paid 2 credits for a ticket and walked inside. The circus tent was enormous, glowing red and gold under holographic lights. Inside, it felt like another world. There were cages, platforms, lights spinning in circles, and a smell of smoke and metal. Performers shouted, laughed, and cracked whips in the air. The crowd clapped as a giant alien beast balanced on 2 legs, roaring on command. Elias tried to enjoy it. But deep inside, something felt wrong. He noticed how the performers never smiled. He noticed the fear in the eyes of the creatures behind the bars. Then his gaze stopped. Near the far end of the stage, half hidden in shadow, was a small cage made of glowing blue energy. Inside sat a young alien girl, maybe 15, maybe younger. Her skin was pale silver, her hair pure white. Chains bound her wrists. She didn't move when the crowd cheered. Her eyes, bright like starlight, stayed fixed on the floor. The announcer's voice echoed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, behold, the last of the Valari species, tamed, trained, and obedient. She dances when told, she sings when ordered. A miracle of human control." The crowd clapped wildly. Elias didn't. His stomach turned. The ringmaster, a tall man in a red coat, snapped his fingers. The girl looked up in fear. A collar around her neck flashed red. She stood up slowly and began to move like a broken puppet. Her thin arms lifted, her steps trembling as soft music played. The lights made her shimmer, but her tears caught the glow. The audience thought it was part of the act. They cheered louder. Elias clenched his fists. He couldn't look away. He felt anger and something else, guilt. The performance ended with the ringmaster bowing proudly. The girl dropped to her knees, trembling. The crowd threw coins, laughing. The show went on, and more tricks, more cruelty. But for Elias, the world around him faded. He only saw her. When the lights dimmed and the crowd began to leave, he stayed near the back gate of the circus. Workers passed by, carrying tools and equipment. He waited, pretending to fix his wristband communicator. Then through the thin metal bars, he heard a faint sound. A whisper. "Help me." He turned. It was her, the alien girl. She sat near the bars, her hands gripping them weakly. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, full of fear and hope. Elias looked around to make sure no one was watching. "What did you say?" He whispered. "Please, don't tell them I spoke," she said softly, her voice trembling. "They will hurt me again." His heart pounded. "Who are you?" "Lyra," she whispered. "I was taken from my home. They call me Animal. But I remember my mother. I remember stars." Her words hit him like a blade. Elias swallowed hard. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't know." Lyra shook her head slowly. "No one cares to know." He took a small step closer, lowering his voice. "Why are you talking to me?" "Because," she said, looking straight into his eyes. "You didn't clap." For a moment the world went still. The noise of the circus faded. The lights flickered. He realized she had noticed him. The only human who didn't cheer for her pain. "I'll come back," Elias said before he could stop himself. "I'll find a way to get you out." Lyra's eyes widened. "You can't, they watch. They track everything. I'm a mechanic," he said, forcing a small smile. "I fix things, even problems like this." A faint spark of hope crossed her face, but then she quickly backed away as heavy footsteps echoed nearby. The ringmaster's shadow appeared near the tents, and Lyra went silent. Elias turned away, pretending to be just another worker. His heart beat fast. The ringmaster spoke harshly to a guard. The creature disobeyed again. Increase her collar voltage tomorrow. She must learn. Elias's jaw tightened. He walked away into the neon rain, his reflection breaking across the puddles. He couldn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face and the silver skin, the frightened eyes, the quiet whisper, "Help me." Outside his small apartment window, the circus lights glowed in the distance, red like blood. Elias stood there in silence, gripping his tool bag. He had made a promise, and for the first time in years, he intended to keep it. Rain poured softly over the metal roofs of Merciles City that night. The neon lights from the circus tent still glowed in the distance, painting streaks of red and blue across the wet streets. Elias walked through the narrow alleys, his coat soaked, his thoughts heavy. He couldn't forget her face, the silver-skinned girl, Lyra, her trembling hands, her quiet whisper, "Help me." It echoed in his mind like a heartbeat he couldn't silence. Inside his small room, he placed his tool bag on the table. Screens on the wall flashed with news headlines about the circus, biggest show in Merciles history, and he turned them off in disgust. He sat in silence, staring at the small glow of his table lamp. "I can't just walk away," he muttered. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for a small holographic chip, a security bypass key, something he had built years ago to hack maintenance drones. It wasn't meant for this kind of job, but it was all he had. Outside, thunder rolled. Elias grabbed his bag and left. The circus grounds were quiet now. Most of the lights were off. Only a few security drones floated near the entrance. Their red eyes scanned the area. The music was gone, replaced by soft mechanical humming and the occasional growl of some unseen beast. Elias slipped through the shadows, his heart pounding. He wore a maintenance uniform he had borrowed from the dockyard, hoping to blend in if caught. He moved past the tents, past the cages of sleeping alien animals, until he reached the far corner, the one cage he couldn't forget. Lyra was there, sitting in the corner, her knees pulled to her chest. The glow from her collar flickered faintly. Elias crouched beside the bars and whispered, "Lyra." Her head lifted instantly. Her eyes widened. "You came back," she whispered, voice shaking. "I said I would." She moved closer, gripping the bars. Her hands were cold, trembling. "If they catch you, they'll kill you." "I've been in worse situations," he said, forcing a smile. "Let me see the lock." He took out his bypass chip, connecting it to the cage panel. Sparks flickered as he worked quickly. His tools made small clicking sounds in the dark. Lyra watched him with a mix of fear and wonder. "Why are you doing this?" she asked softly. "Because you don't belong in a cage," he said. "No one does." She tilted her head slightly, confused. "Most humans don't care. They cheer when I cry." Elias stopped for a moment. "Not all humans are the same," he said quietly. "Some of us still feel shame." Her silver eyes softened, reflecting the faint glow of the tool's light. "You're different," she whispered. He smiled a little. "Don't tell anyone. It'll ruin my reputation." For a brief moment, the tension faded. Lyra smiled, small, weak, but real. It was the first time Elias saw her do it. Then the device beeped. The cage lock flashed green. He leaned closer, whispering, "Tonight I can't take you out. Too many guards. But tomorrow, I'll come when the circus closes. Be ready." Lyra's hope trembled in her voice. "Tomorrow?" He nodded. "I promise." She reached her hand through the bars and gently touched his sleeve. "No one ever promises me anything." He felt the warmth of her touch through the cold rain. "Then this will be the first one kept." Suddenly, footsteps. Elias froze. 2 guards were approaching, their armor clinking, light beams sweeping across the tents. "Hide," Lyra whispered urgently. Elias ducked behind a metal crate, heart racing. The guards' voices grew closer. "Sector 3 clear," one said. "Clear, just animals here." They paused near Lyra's cage. One guard laughed. "You hear what she did?" "Tried to talk to a customer. Like she thinks she's people," the other chuckled. "Maybe we should remind her what she is." He reached for the shock control on his wrist, smirking. Elias clenched his jaw, ready to move. But Lyra spoke softly. "Please," she said, voice barely audible. "I will behave." The guard smirked, lowering his hand. "Good girl." They walked away, still laughing. Elias waited until their voices faded, then came out of hiding. His hands shook with anger. Lyra looked down ashamed. "This is my life," she said. "Pain or silence." "Not anymore," he whispered. "Not if I can help it." He pulled out a small scanner, reading the signal from her collar. The display showed a complex frequency network. "They're using a control AI," he muttered. "If I can find the source, I can shut it off." Lyra blinked, confused. "You can stop it?" "I can try," he said. "I'll need to get inside their system." She hesitated, then asked softly, "Why risk your life for me?" Elias looked at her for a long moment. "Because when I looked into your eyes, I saw someone who deserved more than a cage. And maybe helping you will remind me that I'm still human." The silence between them was deep, but not empty. It was full of something new: trust. Before leaving, Elias handed her a small piece of metal, a broken gear from his toolkit. "Keep this. When you see me again, you'll know I didn't lie." Lyra held it close to her chest as he slipped back into the shadows. The next morning, the city was alive again. News spread that the circus would open its final show before moving to another planet. Elias worked all day at the docks, pretending to be normal, but his mind was elsewhere. On the cage, on Lyra, on the promise he made. Night fell once more. The neon lights lit up the city like before. But this time, Elias wasn't part of the crowd. He moved silently, purpose in every step. Inside the circus, laughter echoed again. But he knew behind the noise there was still pain. He whispered under his breath, tightening his grip on the tool bag. "Hold on, Lyra. Tonight you're going free." The next day began like any other on Aurealis City's docks. Machines grinding, ships roaring, humans shouting orders. But for Elias Grant, everything felt different. His body worked, but his mind was somewhere else, locked behind the glowing bars of a circus cage. Lyra's voice kept echoing in his head. "They will hurt me again." He tightened a bolt too hard and snapped it in half. The foreman yelled, but Elias barely heard. He dropped his tools, cleaned his hands, and walked away without a word. He had already made his choice. That night, the city's sky turned silver with rain. The circus lights flickered through the mist like fire trapped in glass. Elias stood across the street, hidden under a dripping awning, his tool bag heavy with gear, a portable jammer, a neural splicer, and a makeshift EMP charge. He watched guards pacing around the tents. The show was ending. The crowd began to leave, laughing and cheering, unaware that inside those walls people suffered. When the last group walked away, Elias crossed the street. His boots splashed through puddles. He moved quickly, his heart racing. He slipped into the back maintenance tunnel, a narrow path filled with wires, pipes, and the faint hum of power. The air smelled of oil and dust. Every sound felt louder than it should. He whispered to himself. Just like fixing a ship, only this time the cargo fights back. At the center of the circus grounds stood a small control hub, a round building with glowing windows. Elias crept closer, hiding behind containers. Through the glass he could see monitors, circuits, and a tall man typing commands. The man wore a red uniform, Chief Handler Varric, the one who managed the shock collars. Elias watched as Varric spoke into a mic, his tone cruel. Subject Valari-09 still resists training. Increase pain level to 30% during morning session. Elias's jaw clenched. That was Lyra. He waited until Varric left the room, then rushed to the door. He connected his splicer to the security pad. A soft click and the door slid open. Inside, the air was cold. Screens flickered with data, control signals, collar frequencies, and tracking IDs. He scanned the list until he found it. Val-09, active restraint, synced to central AI node. He plugged his device in and started a manual override. Lines of code scrolled across the screen. His hands moved fast. Come on, come on. Then the system spoke in a cold, robotic voice. Unauthorized access detected. Alarms blared. Elias froze. Red lights filled the room. He pulled the plug and ran, slamming the door behind him. Guards shouted in the distance. He sprinted through the maintenance tunnel, ducking behind a service pod as 2 drones flew past, scanning with red lasers. When they were gone, he leaned against the wall, breathing hard. All right, he muttered. Plan B. He opened his bag and pulled out the small EMP charge. It wasn't strong enough to shut down the whole circus, but maybe, just maybe, enough to disable the cages for a few seconds. Minutes later, Elias reached the far corner again, the cage that held Lyra. She was awake this time, standing quietly, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. When she saw him, her expression changed, from fear to disbelief. "You came back," she whispered. "Did you think I'd break my promise?" He said softly. Lyra stepped closer. "You shouldn't be here." He interrupted. "No time. I'm shutting down the system." He placed the EMP charge near the cage's control pad and started setting the timer. "When it goes off, your collar might deactivate. I'll open the cage. We'll have only a few seconds before backup power kicks in." Lyra shook her head. "The collar? It's not just metal. It burns my mind when I disobey. The pain." Elias looked at her with firm eyes. "Then let's end it." He started the timer. 30 seconds. The ticking sound filled the air. Lyra gripped the bars, her hands trembling. "Elias, and if you fail, they'll kill you." He smiled slightly. "Then I'll fail doing something that matters." She stared at him, silent, her eyes shining with emotion. Seconds. He stepped closer to the control panel, connecting wires, overriding circuits. Sparks flew, 5 seconds, a loud sound echoed, footsteps. Guards were returning, 0 seconds. "Elias!" Lyra cried softly. He ignored them, typing faster, heart pounding. The panel glowed. Access granted. Seconds. He slammed the final switch and dove beside the cage. The EMP exploded in a burst of blue light. For a moment, the entire circus flickered, lights dimming, drones crashing to the ground. Lyra screamed as the collar sparked violently, electricity dancing across her neck. Elias reached through the bars and ripped the collar's control plate with his bare hands. The metal burned his palms, but he didn't stop until it broke loose. Then, silence. Lyra collapsed forward, gasping for air. The collar's light went dark. Elias grabbed her shoulder gently. "Lyra, it's over." She looked up weakly, eyes wide, voice trembling. It stopped. Alarms began to rise again, backup power returning. Elias pulled the cage door open. "Can you walk?" She nodded, shaky but determined. "Yes." They ran, through the narrow tunnels, past flickering lights, the sound of shouting guards chasing behind them. Elias guided her through maintenance doors and into the outer streets. Rain hit their faces as they emerged into the open city. For a moment, freedom tasted real. Then from behind, a blaster shot tore through the night, striking the wall beside them. Elias turned, shielding Lyra. "Run!" She hesitated, tears mixing with rain. "I won't leave you. Go!" he shouted. She obeyed, sprinting into the shadows as guards closed in. Elias faced them, his hand gripping a wrench like a weapon. He stood tall, breathing hard. "You call her property," he said, voice steady. "But she's more human than any of you." The guards raised their guns. A flash of blue filled the alley, and then darkness. Rain fell harder than ever, blurring the neon lights into bleeding colors. The alley echoed with sirens and the sharp hiss of steam from damaged pipes. Elias lay on the ground, breathing heavily, his jacket torn and his hand burned from the collar's shock. The blaster shot had grazed his arm, but he was still alive. Somewhere in the dark streets, Lyra was running. He could hear faint footsteps fading away. Good, he thought. She's safe. Then a voice barked from behind. "Don't move!" 2 guards stepped closer, lights flashing over his face. Elias pretended to be dizzy, rolling slowly to one side. "You guys always hunt mechanics this hard?" he muttered. "Where's the alien girl?" one demanded. Elias smirked. "Gone. You should have trained her better." The guard aimed his blaster. "You're finished, human." Before he could fire, a pulse of blue energy rippled through the alley, silent but powerful. The blaster lights flickered out, the guards froze mid-motion, eyes wide. Elias turned slowly. Lyra stood at the end of the alley, hands raised, eyes glowing like twin stars. The air around her shimmered. One by one, the guards collapsed, their weapons melting into sparks. She looked terrified of her own power. "I didn't mean to." Elias limped toward her, grabbing her shoulders gently. "You saved me," he said. "That's all that matters." Her silver eyes filled with tears. "They'll call me a monster now." He shook his head. "No, you're free. That's what you are." They fled through the city's underlayers, old tunnels built before the war where no patrol dared to go. Steam hissed from rusted pipes and glowing graffiti painted the walls with forgotten names. Lyra's steps were uneven. She had no shoes and her feet bled on the rough metal. Elias took off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. "You shouldn't have come back for me," she said quietly. "I made a promise," he replied. "Humans break a lot of things. I won't add my word to the list." For a while they walked in silence. The only sound was the hum of distant machinery. Then Lyra spoke again, her voice trembling. "When I used my power, I felt everything. The machines, the lights, even the fear in their minds. It hurt." Elias looked at her, fascinated. "You felt their fear?" She nodded weakly. "My kind connects to energy, to emotions. But the collar blocked it. When it broke, everything came back at once. That's why they kept you here," he muttered. "They weren't just showing you off, they were studying you." Lyra stopped walking, staring at him. "They will never stop. The circus is only one branch. There are others. They take children, train them, sell them." Elias clenched his fists. "Then we'll burn them all down." She blinked in surprise. "We?" He gave a faint smile. "You think I came this far to leave you now?" Hours passed before they reached an old cargo port at the edge of the city. The place was abandoned. Ships rusting, lights dead, and only the sound of wind moving through empty hangars. Elias found a small maintenance room and guided her inside. He patched his arm with torn cloth, then used his tools to fix a heater from leftover wires. Soon a small orange glow filled the cold room. Lyra sat near it, watching the tiny flame. "I don't understand you," she said softly. "Most humans laugh when I suffer. You risked your life to free me." He leaned back against the wall, tired but calm. "Because I was tired of watching good beings get crushed." "You didn't deserve chains," she tilted her head. "Do you deserve chains?" He chuckled quietly. "Maybe I used to. I built engines for traders who carried slaves. I told myself I didn't know, but I did. I just didn't care enough to stop it." Lyra looked at him, eyes full of quiet understanding. "Now you do." "Yeah," he said. "Now I do." Suddenly, the soft buzz of a holoscreen filled the room. Elias turned. It was the emergency broadcast channel, still working. A news anchor appeared on the cracked screen. "Breaking update. A human technician named Elias Grant has been identified as the suspect behind the attack on the intergalactic circus. He is believed to be in possession of an escaped alien specimen classified as Valari Subject 09. Bounty set at 50,000 credits. Dead or alive?" Lyra's hands trembled. "They're hunting you now." Elias turned off the screen. "No," he said. "They're hunting us." She looked at him with guilt. "If you leave me, they'll stop. You can go back." He stared at her, voice steady. "I'm not going back to a world that puts living beings in cages." Tears glimmered in her silver eyes. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he said quietly. "I know what freedom looks like when it's scared." The night grew colder. Outside, distant sirens echoed again, search drones sweeping the skies. Elias packed his gear, then looked at Lyra. "We can't stay. They'll trace energy signals from your collar." She stood, shivering, holding his jacket close. "Where will we go?" "There's a smuggler route through the asteroid tunnels. If we reach the outlaw colonies, we might find safety." Lyra hesitated. "And if they find us before that?" Elias smiled faintly. "Then they'll regret it." She looked at him for a long moment, then whispered, "You're strange, Elias Grant." "I get that a lot." They left the shelter just before dawn. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets washed clean but empty. The first light of the twin suns painted the clouds gold. As they reached the edge of the old spaceport, Lyra stopped. Her collar, now broken and hung loosely in her hands. She looked down at it, eyes full of pain. Elias turned back to her. "You can throw it away." Lyra shook her head slowly. "No, I'll keep it, Ummerman, to remember what freedom cost." She looked up at him. "You paid the price, not me." Elias smiled, the kind of smile that carried both sorrow and pride. "Then make it worth something." He looked at the rising light, then at her. "Let's disappear before the world wakes up." Together they stepped into the mist. Two fugitives, a human mechanic and an alien girl, walking toward a sky that no longer belonged to cages. The stars outside the city shimmered like broken glass. The skyway tunnels stretched ahead, long black roads connecting forgotten colonies. Elias and Lyra stood near the loading platform of an old cargo skimmer, its engines coughing with every breath of power. It wasn't much, but it would fly. Elias tightened a wire on the control panel. Sparks jumped. "If this old bucket holds together," he muttered, "we might reach the outer rim before they track us." Lyra stood behind him, wrapped in his jacket. Her silver skin glowed faintly under the cold lights. "You fix ships the way others breathe," she said softly. He smiled. "It's the only thing I've ever been good at." "Not true," she whispered. "You freed me." That made him pause. For a second, his usual calm cracked into something softer. Maybe I was fixing myself too. The engines roared alive, shaking dust from the ceiling. They climbed aboard and lifted off, the city lights shrinking beneath them. Hours passed. The cargo skimmer glided through the upper atmosphere, heading toward the asteroid tunnels, a maze of drifting rocks and hidden smuggler routes used by criminals and refugees alike. Inside, the small cabin hummed with quiet. Elias sat at the controls, eyes tired but focused. Lyra sat beside him, watching stars drift by. She broke the silence first. "What will you do when we reach the outlaw colony?" "Find someone who can erase my ID," he said. "After that, I don't know. Maybe fix ships for people who don't ask questions." "And me?" she asked softly. He turned his head, meeting her gaze. "You'll be free to choose. Go where you want." "Live how you want," Lyra hesitated. "And if I choose to stay with you?" He looked away, trying to hide a small smile. "Then I guess I'll have company." The ship shook suddenly. Alarms blinked red. Elias cursed under his breath. "Scanner lock in or someone's following us." Outside, 2 black ships appeared from behind an asteroid. Sleek, armed, and fast, bounty hunters. A voice came through the radio, cold and confident. "Elias Grant, surrender the alien property and your death will be painless." Elias switched off the channel. "Typical hospitality." Lyra's voice trembled. "They found us already. They followed the bounty signal," he said, flipping switches. "Your collar's broken, but its chip might still be transmitting." She touched her neck in fear. "Can you stop it?" "I can try," he said, yanking open the dashboard. "Hold the controls steady." The ship rattled as blaster fire lit up the sky around them. Lyra grabbed the steering lever with both hands, her arms shaking. "They're firing again!" Elias worked fast, wires sparking around him. "Just a few more seconds." Another blast rocked the hull, knocking tools to the floor. Lyra screamed as smoke filled the cabin. Then, silence. Elias ripped the chip from the collar fragment and crushed it with his boot. "There, they can't track us now, but they're still here." He jumped into the pilot seat. "Hold tight." The skimmer dived sharply, weaving between floating asteroids. The bounty ships followed, firing bright blue bolts that flashed across the void. Lyra closed her eyes, whispering something in her language, a soft, glowing hum that spread through the cabin. Elias blinked. "What are you doing?" "Protecting us." The next bolt hit their rear hull, but instead of exploding, it bent away like light hitting glass. He stared in disbelief. "You deflected it." Lyra's eyes glowed brighter. "I can bend energy, but only for a moment. Then make it count." She nodded, and her whole body shimmered with light. The bounty ships fired again. The blast scattered harmlessly into space. Elias pulled the skimmer upward, then twisted between 2 large rocks. With one final surge, they vanished into a debris cloud, the hunters losing their signal completely. Inside, silence returned. The engines hummed weakly. Both of them sat still, hearts pounding. Elias laughed softly. "You just saved us again." Lyra smiled faintly. "Now we're even." He leaned back, exhausted. Not even close, her expression changed, quiet, serious. "You're hurt," she said, noticing his arm bleeding again. "It's fine," he said. Lyra moved closer, placing her hands gently over the wound. A faint blue light spread from her palms and the bleeding stopped. Elias stared, speechless.
"You can heal too?"
"Not always. It takes strength. I can't do it often." He looked at her, truly looked, realizing how much she'd endured, how much power she carried beneath the fear. "You're full of surprises," she smiled softly. "So are you, Elias Grant." Later that night, they landed on a small asteroid base hidden inside a hollowed rock. A metal door opened, revealing a bearded man in a dirty flight suit. Name's Juno, captain of the colony ship Dawnfire, he said. You two look like trouble. Elias smiled tiredly. You have no idea. They followed him inside the base. Dim lights, makeshift beds, scattered tools. Juno poured them a drink that smelled like burnt oil. So what brings a mechanic and a glowing alien girl to my doorstep? Elias kept his voice calm. We're just passing through. Need supplies and fuel. We can pay, Juno squinted. The human networks are screaming your name, Grant. Big bounty on your head. You're either crazy or a hero. Maybe both, Elias said. Lyra spoke softly. We just want peace. Juno looked at her, then sighed. Peace is expensive out here. But you helped one of mine once on a refugee ship from Valis. I owe you. Elias raised an eyebrow. You remember that? I remember people who save lives, Juno said. You can stay the night. But bounty hunters don't forget. You'll need to leave by morning. In their small cabin that night, Lyra sat by the window watching the stars. Elias, she whispered. If they catch us again, I'll surrender. They want me, not you. He looked up from his tools, his face hardening. Don't ever say that again. But it's true. No. His voice was sharp, filled with quiet fire. If they take you, they win. Everything we've done means nothing. You're not property, Lyra, you're hope. And I'm not letting hope be caged again. She stared at him, silent, emotional, her throat tight with unspoken words. Then softly, she whispered, If I live through this, I'll never forget you. He smiled sadly. You better live through it or I'll come drag you back from the stars myself. Outside, unseen through the asteroid dust, a red beacon blinked faintly on one of the bounty ships still searching. They hadn't lost the trail completely. The hunters were coming again. And this time, they weren't bringing chains, they were bringing war. The asteroid base trembled as warning sirens began to wail. Red lights blinked across the metal corridors. Juno's voice echoed through the speakers, harsh and urgent. Incoming ships, 3 of them. They found us! Elias dropped his tools instantly. He and Lyra ran to the main hangar where mechanics and smugglers scrambled to arm what little defense they had. Through the wide glass window, the black silhouettes of bounty cruisers appeared. Sleek, sharp, merciless. Lyra's breathing quickened. They're here for me. Elias shook his head. They're here for us. He grabbed his blaster and tossed another to Juno. You hold them off. I'll get to the control room. Juno frowned. What are you planning? Elias replied, voice low and calm. I'm ending this circus for good. Inside the control core, the base's control room was a chaos of blinking screens and static noise. Elias moved quickly, connecting his wrist module to the colony's network. Lines of code flashed. He wasn't trying to escape this time. He was going to attack. He had learned something from the circus's data files. The collars, the cages, the tracking systems. Everything was linked through a central AI grid called the Menagerie Network. If he could hack it, he could free every alien slave under human control. Lyra entered quietly behind him. You mean to destroy their whole system? Elias didn't look up. No, I mean to set everyone free. Her silver eyes glowed in the dim light. You'll make enemies of every human authority. He smiled faintly. Then I'll have the right kind of enemies. The infiltration begins outside. The bounty cruisers opened fire. Explosions shook the walls. Juno's voice crackled through the comms. They're boarding the lower hangar. We can't hold them long. Elias's fingers flew over the keys. Keep them busy, he muttered. Just a few more seconds. Lyra stood beside him, her hands glowing softly. The lights flickered as her energy synced with his machines. She was helping him connect faster, her alien senses blending with his human engineering. Suddenly the screen flashed. Access point found. Intergalactic circuit. Gridalius grinned. Got it. But then another message. Counter-intrusion detected. Human ID. Varric. Lyra's face paled. Varric, the ringmaster? Elias's jaw tightened. He's not just a ringmaster. He's the system's core operator. The speaker crackled and Varric's cold voice filled the room. You think you can undo what humanity built, mechanic? You freed one pet and now you imagine yourself a hero? Elias typed faster. Heroes don't need your permission. Varric laughed darkly. You can't save them all. They like their cages. It's the only way humans stay powerful. Power without mercy isn't strength, Elias said. plugging in the final wire. The console roared with static. Sparks flew. Lyra reached out, gripping his hand, her power flowing into the system. Together, their energy surged through the cables. Outside, every collar across the galaxy blinked red, then shattered. Freedom ignites in distant starships. Alien slaves gasped as their chains broke. On mining colonies, glowing collars fell to the ground. In forgotten circuses, frightened children looked up as alarms blared and doors swung open. Across the stars, millions of beings felt freedom for the first time. Inside the control room, Elias staggered, smoke rising from the console. "We did it," he breathed. Lyra caught him as he stumbled. "You freed them," she whispered, tears in her eyes. He smiled weakly. "We freed them. The final assault." The door exploded inward. Varric stepped through, armor gleaming black and red. His cybernetic arm crackled with energy. 2 bounty soldiers followed behind him. Lyra pushed Elias behind her, eyes blazing with light. "Stay back," Varric sneered. "You really believe this human cares for you? He'll trade you the moment the bounty doubles." Elias raised his weapon. "Funny. That's what monsters say right before they fall." Varric lunged forward. Lightning burst from his arm, striking the floor. Lyra threw up her hands, forming a shimmering energy shield. The blast hit, rippling through the air. Elias fired 3 shots, 2 missed, 1 struck Varric's shoulder. Sparks erupted from his armor. Varric growled, his voice metallic. "You'll die for this." Lyra's power flared brighter, forcing him back. "No," she said, voice calm and strong. "We'll live for it." Her light exploded outward, filling the room with blinding brilliance. When it faded, Varric lay unconscious on the ground, his circuits fried. The broadcast Elias moved to the central terminal, breathing hard. "The network's open. We can send a message," Lyra nodded. "Tell them the truth," he pressed record. The camera flickered on. Elias looked straight into the lens, his voice firm but filled with emotion. "My name is Elias Grant. I was a mechanic until I saw what we became. Tonight, every collar is broken. Every cage is open. If you believe in freedom, protect those you once enslaved. Humanity's strength isn't in control, it's in compassion. We are better than this. Let's prove it." He ended the recording. The message broadcast across human channels, pirate frequencies, and alien comms alike. For the first time in decades, the galaxy listened. Aftermath, Juno's voice came through the comms again. "Elias, the hunters are retreating." "You did it, man." He smiled faintly. "No, we did." Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "You just changed everything." "Maybe," he said softly, "but change comes with a price." Outside, the horizon glowed with fire from the damaged cruisers falling into the void. Yet beyond that, beyond the destruction, was something else. Hope. Lyra leaned against the window, watching the stars. "You know they'll never forgive you for this." Elias chuckled quietly. "Good, means I finally did something right." She smiled through her tears. "You're not just a mechanic anymore." He looked out at the stars, eyes burning with quiet pride. "No, I'm human, and that still means something." The ship's engines hummed as the base began to move, drifting toward open space. Behind them, the galaxy stirred awake, angry rulers, free prisoners, trembling crowds, and somewhere, deep inside it all, a new legend began to form. A legend of the human who fought the system, and won. The galaxy burned with change. Every world, every colony, every ship, all whispering the same name, Elias Grant. The man who broke the cages, the mechanic who made the impossible happen, and beside him the alien girl with silver eyes. The one they once called property, now a living symbol of freedom. The smuggler ship Dawnfire drifted through the silent void. The stars outside glowed like a river of fire, endless and calm. Inside the ship, the hum of engines filled the air. Elias stood near the window, staring into the stars. His hands were scarred, his eyes tired, but there was peace in his expression. Lyra walked beside him quietly, wrapped in a dark cloak. Her collar was gone, melted into scrap. Yet she kept a small piece of it hanging from a string around her wrist. Elias noticed. "You still wear that thing?" Lyra smiled faintly. "To remind me how far I've come." He nodded, looking out again. "And how far we still have to go." News reports flashed across nearby systems. Some praised him, others called him a terrorist. Human governments called it the Mechanic Rebellion. But for millions of freed slaves, Elias and Lyra were heroes. Still, the price of freedom was heavy. The bounty on their heads had doubled. The menagerie's remains, now under military control, wanted revenge. And yet, for now, there was quiet. Inside the ship's small mess hall, Juno poured them both a drink. "You two just started the biggest movement since the Galactic War," he said with a half-smile. "Half the galaxy wants to kill you. The other half wants to worship you." Elias chuckled softly. "Let's hope the second half wins." Lyra tilted her head. "What will you do now?" Juno leaned back. "I'll spread the message. Every smuggler, every rebel ship, they'll know what you did. You didn't just free slaves, Elias. You lit a spark. The rest of us will make it a fire." He stood, giving them a small nod. "You should rest. Dawnfire will take you to the outer colonies. After that, your path's your own." Later that night, Elias sat alone in the cockpit. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, silent witnesses to everything that had happened. He felt the weight of it, the lives saved, the enemies made, the future uncertain. Lyra entered quietly, her footsteps light. "You can't sleep," she said. He smiled faintly. "Never could when the engines are running. Old habit." She sat beside him, gazing out into space. "Do you regret it?" Elias thought for a moment. "No, not a second. But I wish I'd done it sooner." Lyra's eyes softened. "You gave people hope." He looked at her. "I gave them a chance. Hope's what you gave them." She blinked, surprised. "Me?" "Lyra, when you looked into that camera, when the world saw your face, they saw what we'd forgotten." "What's that?" she whispered. "Humanity." For a long time neither spoke. The ship drifted quietly through the starlight. Then, from the console, a soft beep sounded. Juno's voice crackled through the intercom. "Elias, incoming transmission. It's from the outer colonies. You'll want to see this." Elias tapped the screen. The image flickered. A young alien woman appeared, trembling with emotion. Behind her, hundreds of freed beings stood under a banner that read, "We are not property." "You don't know me," she said, voice breaking. "But because of you, our children are free. We're building something new, a place for all who were slaves. We'll call it Haven. You and Lyra will always have a home here." The message ended. Lyra wiped a tear from her cheek. "They're building a world." Elias smiled softly. "Then maybe we did something right after all." Suddenly the ship shook. Alarms blared. Juno's voice shouted over the speakers. "Patrol ship incoming!" "Menagerie survivors, they found us." Elias jumped to his feet, checking the radar. "2 cruisers, they're jamming our comms." Lyra stood beside him, calm despite the danger. "We can't fight them all." He grinned. "Who said anything about fighting?" He flipped a switch. "Remember that fuel overload system I installed?" Lyra blinked. "The one you said not to touch?" "Yeah, that one." He slammed the lever forward. The engines roared, energy building like a storm. The Dawnfire shot forward straight into a meteor cloud. The pursuing cruisers fired wildly, blasts hitting rocks, creating explosions of light. Lyra grabbed the seat, shouting, "You're insane!" Elias laughed through the chaos. "You wanted freedom, right? This is what it looks like." They dove between 2 massive meteors. The ships behind them collided, bursting into a fiery bloom of debris. When the light faded, the sky was quiet again. Hours later, the Dawnfire drifted safely through open space once more. Elias leaned back, exhausted, smiling at the empty void. Lyra looked at him with quiet admiration. "You keep risking your life for everyone. Don't you ever get tired?" He looked at her with tired eyes but a small grin. "You don't get tired of breathing." She smiled, the kind of smile that carried both sadness and hope. "One day, humans and my kind will live without fear." He nodded. "And when that day comes, maybe I'll finally rest." Lyra reached out, gently holding his hand. Until then, he looked at her, then out into the stars. Until then, we keep flying. Outside, the dawn fire sailed across the galaxy, a tiny spark against an endless sea of darkness. But everywhere their message traveled, cages opened, chains broke, and voices rose. Children who had been slaves now looked up at the stars and whispered the same name. Elias Grant, the human who fought for us. And somewhere in the infinite, distance under a sky filled with freedom, Lyra's quiet voice echoed in his memory. You gave me back my sky. He smiled to himself, staring into the horizon of starlight. Then let's make sure no one ever takes it away again. The ship vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind a trail of blue light, a sign that freedom, once born, never truly dies.